Jake Morrison was drinking coffee when the alarm started screaming. He was on the Sentinel-7 space station, floating 300 miles above Earth. His shift had been quiet until that moment. He put down his cup and ran to the main control room. The screens showed something that made his blood turn cold. Thousands of black ships were coming out of nowhere, appearing in the sky above every major city on the planet. They were huge, each one the size of a mountain, and they were not sending any messages. Amy Foster was already at her station, her hands shaking as she typed commands into her computer. She looked up at Jake with wide eyes. "Sir, they're everywhere. Above Tokyo, New York, London, every big city we have. They just appeared out of nothing." "Try to contact them," Jake said. His voice was calm, but his heart was hammering in his chest. "Ask them what they want." Amy tried every frequency, every language protocol they had. Nothing came back. The alien ships just hung there in the sky, silent and waiting. Then Tokyo disappeared. A beam of bright blue light came down from the nearest ship and touched the city. For a moment, everything turned white on the screen. When the light faded, Tokyo was gone, just gone. Nothing left but a crater of melted rock that glowed red and orange. 3 million people had been alive 1 second and dead the next. "Oh God," Amy whispered. She was staring at the screen where her home city of Seattle should have been. Another beam of light was coming down. "No, no, no." Jake watched helplessly as city after city vanished. The aliens, whoever they were not interested in talking. They were not interested in taking prisoners or demanding surrender. They were just killing everyone they could find as fast as they could. "All crew, get to the escape pods now," Jake ordered over the station speakers. "We have maybe 5 minutes before they target us." People ran through the corridors, their faces showing pure terror. Some were crying. Some were completely silent, moving like robots because their minds could not accept what was happening. Jake made sure everyone was getting into the pods before he allowed himself to move toward his own. Amy was still at her station, tears running down her face as she watched the destruction below. "My mom was down there. My little brother. They're dead, aren't they?" Jake pulled her away from the screen. "We have to go, now." They ran together to the last pod. Behind them, through the windows, they could see Earth burning. The oceans were boiling. The air was full of fire. The beautiful blue planet that had been humanity's home for millions of years was turning into hell. The escape pod launched just as a beam of light hit. Sentinel-7. The station exploded into 1,000 pieces of burning metal. Jake and Amy were thrown around inside the small pod as it fell toward Earth, the heat shields glowing red as they hit the atmosphere. They landed hard in the Australian desert, far from any city. The pod's door blew open and hot, poisoned air rushed in. Jake pulled on his survival suit's helmet just in time. The air outside would kill anyone who breathed it now. He climbed out onto red sand and looked up at the sky. The alien ships were still there, hovering like huge black birds over a corpse. In the distance, he could see the glow of burning cities. Other pods were landing around him. People were climbing out, most of them in shock, all of them with the same lost look in their eyes. They had just watched their entire world die, and somehow they were still alive. Lisa Keene came walking over the sand from another pod. She had been the captain of a Navy destroyer before it was blown apart in the first attack. Her face was covered in blood from a cut on her head, but she was already pulling up maps on her wrist computer. "We have maybe 50,000 military people left alive in underground bunkers," she said, her voice hard and cold. "A few ships that were out on long patrol and didn't get caught in the attack. Some supplies in hidden bases. That's all we have left." "Then it's over," someone said. "We lost. Humanity is finished." Jake looked at the burning sky and shook his head. "No, they made a mistake. They let some of us live." He pulled up a star map on his own computer. "We had 3 colony ships that left Earth last year. They were heading to new star systems to start new settlements. They were far enough away that these aliens probably didn't find them." Lisa understood immediately what he was thinking. "We hide, we survive. We rebuild, and then we come back and kill every single one of them." The other survivors looked at each other. Most of them were crying. All of them were angry. They had lost everything. Their families were dead. Their homes were destroyed. Their entire civilization had been wiped out in a single afternoon by aliens who had not even bothered to explain why. "We need to get to the underground bases," Lisa said. "We need to gather everyone who's left and get off this planet before they come back to finish the job." Over the next few hours, they found more survivors. A few thousand here, a few hundred there. Most were military personnel who had been in deep bunkers when the attack started. Some were lucky civilians who had been in the right place at the right time. Jake stood on a hill and watched the last of the escape ships lift off from hidden launch sites. They were heading into deep space, running away from Earth as fast as they could go. Behind them, their home planet was dying, its surface covered in fire and poison. He took one last look at the world where he had been born, where his parents and his sister and all his friends had lived and died. He memorized the way it looked now, burning and broken, so he would never forget what had been done to his people. "We'll come back," he promised quietly. "However long it takes, whatever we have to do, we will come back. And when we do, we will make them pay for this. Every single one of them will die screaming, just like our people died." The ship's engines fired and Jake felt the gravity pulling him back into his seat. Earth fell away behind them, getting smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny dot of light in the darkness. 7 billion people had been alive when the sun came up that morning. Now only 300 million were left, scattered and running for their lives. But they were alive. And as long as even one human being still breathed, the war was not over. The aliens had destroyed their world. Now Earth would answer with absolute vengeance. 20 years had passed since Earth burned. Nathan Pierce stood looking out the window of New Hope Station at the stars beyond. The station was hidden behind a massive gas giant, invisible to anyone who might be looking for survivors. He had been a young scientist when the aliens attacked. Now his hair was gray and his face was lined with years of hard work and grief. Sarah Bennett walked into the room wearing her military uniform. She had been just a junior officer when Earth died. Now she commanded all the military forces the surviving humans had managed to build. "The shipyards finished another 50 destroyers this month," she said. "We're ahead of schedule. The new weapons are working better than we hoped." Nathan nodded but did not look away from the stars. "How many people do we have now?" 60,000 across all 3 hidden colonies. "The birth rate is good. Every child is being taught why we're here, why we train, why we build weapons." "Good," Nathan said. His reflection in the window showed a face that had not smiled in 20 years. "Have you picked your crew for the scouting mission?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "I'm leading it myself. We leave in 3 days. If the aliens are where our spy probes say they are, we'll find their home world and come back to report." For 20 years, humanity had hidden in the darkness between stars. They had built in secret, trained in secret, prepared in secret. Every day was spent working toward one single goal: revenge. The aliens who destroyed Earth were called Zetharians. Humanity had learned this from studying the wreckage of Zetharian ships that had been left in orbit around the dead planet. They had pulled apart the alien technology piece by piece, learning how it worked, learning how to make it better. The Zetharians had faster-than-light travel, but human scientists had improved it. The Zetharians had powerful weapons, but human engineers had built stronger ones. The Zetharians had energy shields, but humanity had learned to break through them. Most importantly, humanity had sent tiny spy probes into Zetharian space. These probes were too small to detect, and they had spent years mapping every Zetharian world, every military base, every weakness in their defenses. What they found was surprising. The Zetharians had no allies. They had no friends. They ruled their part of space alone, and they had gotten there by doing to other species exactly what they had done to Earth. Whenever they found a new civilization that might someday become strong, they killed everyone before that could happen. The Zetharians had destroyed 100 different species over thousands of years. They thought this made them safe. They thought this made them strong. It just made them alone. 3 days later, Sarah's ship called the Revenant slipped into the Zetharian home system using new stealth technology that made it nearly invisible. She stood on the bridge with her crew, watching the screens as 3 planets came into view. "Look at that," Chris Palmer said from his station. He was checking the sensors and shaking his head in disbelief. "They have almost no military ships here. No defense stations in orbit. No patrol ships, nothing." Sarah stared at the 3 beautiful green and blue planets floating in space. Billions of Zetharians lived there in huge cities, completely safe and comfortable. They had pushed all their military forces out to the edges of their territory because they had never been attacked at home. Why would they be? They killed every potential threat before it could grow strong enough to fight back. "They think they're invincible," Sarah said quietly. They've been doing this for so long that they can't imagine someone surviving and coming back for revenge. She recorded everything. The locations of the biggest cities, the industrial centers where they built their ships and weapons, the government buildings, the breeding colonies where young Zetharians grew up, every target that humanity would need when the time came to strike. Chris was counting the population numbers from the sensor readings. 40 billion on the main planet alone, another 10 billion on the other two worlds, plus orbital stations with a few billion more. 50 billion, Sarah repeated. She thought about the 7 billion humans who had died screaming when Earth burned. Not enough. But it's a start. They stayed in the Zetharian system for 3 days, their stealth technology keeping them hidden while they mapped everything. Sarah wanted to fire her weapons right then, wanted to start killing Zetharians immediately, but she held back. This was just a scouting mission. The real attack would come later, when humanity was truly ready. On the trip back to New Hope Station, Sarah sat alone in her quarters and thought about what they were planning to do. They were going to kill 50 billion living beings, not just soldiers but civilians, not just adults but children, everyone. It was genocide, pure and simple. The exact same thing the Zetharians had done to humanity, but Sarah had been on Earth when it died. She had watched her parents burn. She had seen entire cities vanish in seconds. She had spent 20 years working for this moment, and she was not going to stop now because of moral concerns. The Zetharians had taught humanity a harsh lesson. In a universe full of dangers, mercy was a luxury no one could afford. They had shown no mercy to Earth, and Earth would show none in return. When the Revenant arrived back at New Hope Station, Sarah presented her findings to the military council. She showed them the maps, the population numbers, the complete lack of home defenses. They're completely vulnerable, she said. They have a strong military, but it's all far away from their home worlds. If we hit fast and hard, we can destroy their entire civilization before they can react. Admiral Lisa Keene, who had survived the fall of Earth just like Sarah, studied the maps with cold eyes. She was older now, her hair gray, but she still had the same fire inside her. How long until we're ready? 5 more years, Sarah said. We need more ships, more weapons, more trained soldiers. But in 5 years, we can do it. We can end them. Lisa nodded slowly. Then we have 5 more years of work ahead of us. Everyone needs to understand what we're doing. We're not going to offer the Zetharians a chance to surrender. We're not going to take prisoners. We're going to kill every single one of them, just like they tried to kill every single one of us. The room was silent. Everyone there had lost someone when Earth burned. Most had lost everyone. They all knew that what they were planning was monstrous, but none of them cared anymore. Let's get to work, Lisa said. 5 more years of endless work turned the human colonies into massive war factories. Marcus Webb walked through the huge ship hangar, looking at row after row of warships built for one purpose only: destruction. 2,000 ships, every single one designed to kill Zetharians. They still don't know we're alive, Admiral Lisa Keene said, walking beside Marcus. She was old now, her body tired from years of stress, but her mind was still sharp and focused. Our intelligence reports say they think Earth is completely dead and empty. Just another species they wiped out and forgot about. Marcus stopped in front of the biggest ship in the fleet. It was called Final Testament, a massive warship that could crack a planet's crust with its main weapon. How many fighters do we have ready? 40,000 regular military, another 20,000 in reserve. We've been training people since they were children. This whole generation was born for war. They walked onto the Final Testament together, moving through corridors packed with weapons and ammunition. Every system had been designed using a combination of human intelligence and stolen Zetharian technology that had been made better. The shields could take incredible punishment. The weapons could destroy almost anything. Danny Cruz was waiting on the bridge. He was young, barely 30, but he had trained his whole life for this moment. He had been 6 years old when Earth burned, one of the lucky children evacuated on a colony ship. He did not remember the old world, only the stories of what had been lost. All systems are working perfectly, Admiral, Danny reported. Every ship in the fleet is ready to launch on your order. Lisa walked to the captain's chair but did not sit down. Instead, she turned on the communication system so her voice would reach every ship in the fleet and every person in the colonies. 25 years ago, the Zetharians came to Earth without warning and murdered 7 billion innocent people. They killed our families. They destroyed our cities. They burned our world to ashes because they were afraid of what we might become someday. They failed. We survived. We hid. We built. We prepared. And now we are ready. Today we take our fleet into Zetharian space. We will not ask for their surrender. We will not show mercy. We will do to them exactly what they did to us. We will make sure they can never hurt another species ever again. This is not about justice. Justice died with Earth. This is about revenge, pure revenge, and we will not stop until every last Zetharian is dead. The fleet launched in perfect formation, 2,000 warships moving as one into the darkness of space. Behind them, the colonies watched and waited for news. They were 300 million people attacking an empire of 100 billion. But they were also people who had nothing left to lose. The journey to Zetharian space took 3 weeks. During that time, the crews trained constantly, running simulations of the coming battle over and over. They studied Zetharian tactics, practiced their attack formations, checked and rechecked every weapon system. Jake Morrison, now an old man, sat in his quarters and looked at pictures of Earth before the attack. He had saved them on a data chip that he carried everywhere. Images of green forests and blue oceans, cities full of lights, people smiling and happy, not knowing that their world was about to end. He thought about his parents, dead for 25 years now. He thought about his friends, his neighbors, everyone he had ever known. All gone. All murdered by aliens who had not even considered humans worth talking to. "We're doing the right thing," he said to himself, looking at a picture of his mother. "They have to pay for what they did." But even as he said it, a small voice in the back of his mind wondered if his mother would agree. She had been a kind woman, someone who believed in forgiveness and second chances. Would she want him to commit genocide in her name? Jake pushed the thought away. It did not matter what she would have wanted. She was dead, and the only thing he could do for her now was make sure the ones who killed her faced justice. No, not justice. Revenge. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Zetharian space. Immediately, they detected border patrol stations, small military outposts designed to watch for intruders. All ships, attack pattern Delta, Lisa ordered. The human fleet split into groups and hit the patrol stations from multiple directions at once. The Zetharians did not even have time to send a warning before they were destroyed. Their shields failed quickly under the focused human weapons. Their ships exploded one after another. In less than 20 minutes, 12 border stations were nothing but debris. "They're sending reinforcements," the sensor officer reported. "A large fleet is heading our way. 300 capital ships." Lisa smiled coldly. 300 ships was a major force by Zetharian standards, but humanity had studied their tactics for 25 years. They knew every move the Zetharians would make before they made it. "Execute attack pattern Fallen Earth," Lisa commanded. The human fleet split into a dozen different groups, each one attacking from a different angle. The Zetharians tried to form a defensive line, but their formation was too rigid, too predictable. Human ships hit them from above and below, from the sides, from behind. The Zetharian shields were designed to stop attacks from one direction. They could not handle strikes coming from everywhere at once. Ship after ship exploded as human weapons tore through their defenses. In 17 minutes, all 300 Zetharian ships were destroyed. "Not damaged, not disabled, destroyed. Keep moving," Lisa ordered. Straight to their home system. Sarah Bennett led a smaller group of fast attack ships deeper into Zetharian territory. Her mission was to destroy communication relays and sensor stations, cutting off the Zetharians from each other so they could not organize a proper defense. Target destroyed. Chris Palmer reported after they blew up another relay station. "They're blind now. They can't warn their home worlds what's coming." 6 hours later, the human fleet arrived at the Zetharian home system. 3 beautiful planets hung in space, their surfaces covered with gleaming cities. 50 billion Zetharians lived there, completely unaware that death had just arrived. Lisa opened a communication channel and broadcast on every frequency the Zetharians used. "People of Zetharia, 25 years ago you came to Earth and destroyed it. You murdered 7 billion human beings without warning, without mercy, without cause. You thought you had erased us from existence. You were wrong, and now you will pay the price for what you did." On the main planet, the Zetharian government finally understood what was happening. They sent desperate messages offering to negotiate, offering money and resources and territory, offering anything if the humans would just stop. Lisa deleted every message without reading it. She remembered Earth burning. She remembered the screams. She remembered 7 billion voices falling silent. "All ships," she said quietly. "Open fire." 2,000 human warships fired at once. The sky above the 3 Zetharian worlds turned white with energy as countless weapons unleashed their fury. Plasma beams capable of melting continents struck the surface of the planets. Missiles traveling at incredible speeds hit with the force of nuclear bombs. Gravity weapons tore at the very fabric of space, ripping apart cities and mountains alike. On the main planet, a Zetharian mother was reading to her children when the first beam struck their city. She had just enough time to pull them close before everything turned to fire. She died not understanding what was happening or why. That same scene played out billions of times across all 3 worlds. The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it finally stopped, the 3 planets were glowing balls of molten rock. Their oceans had boiled away into space. Their atmosphere was nothing but superheated gas. Every city, every building, every living thing on the surface had been vaporized. The orbital stations tried to evacuate people, but human fighters hunted them down one by one. When a station tried to surrender, the humans destroyed it anyway. When ships tried to flee, the humans chased them down and killed them. 50 billion Zetharians had been alive when the sun rose that morning. By the time it set, they were all dead. Danny Cruz watched from the bridge of the Final Testament as the planets burned. He felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a hollow emptiness inside. "Scanning for survivors," he reported in a flat voice. "Negative," the sensor officer said. "Nothing alive on any of the 3 worlds. The orbital stations are all destroyed. We're detecting some ships trying to escape the system. Hunt them down," Admiral Lisa Keene ordered. "No survivors." But destroying the home worlds was just the beginning. Over the next weeks, the human fleet moved through Zetharian space like a wave of destruction. Every colony world, every mining station, every military outpost, all of them were found and destroyed. Marcus Webb led ground troops to planets where Zetharians had retreated into underground bunkers, thinking they could hide the way humans had once hidden. His soldiers used deep scanning equipment to find the bunkers, then sealed the entrances and left the Zetharians trapped inside to die slowly. "Is this really necessary?" one of his young soldiers asked after they sealed another bunker. "They're helpless down there. Just civilians trying to survive." Marcus looked at the soldier with cold eyes. 25 years ago, my wife and daughter were just civilians trying to survive. The Zetharians killed them anyway. These aliens would have died in the orbital bombardment if they hadn't hidden. We're just finishing the job." The soldier said nothing more. He had been born after Earth died and had only heard stories. He did not really understand the depth of rage that drove the older survivors. On a colony world called Zethara Prime, home to 8 billion Zetharians, Sarah Bennett personally oversaw the attack. The planet had beautiful forests and clean rivers, cities full of art and culture, schools where children learned and played. Sarah remembered her own home city of Seattle, remembered how beautiful it had been before the fire came down from the sky. "Target all population centers," she ordered. "Fire when ready." Within an hour, Zethara Prime was a burning wasteland. 8 billion more dead. Some of the younger human soldiers began to question what they were doing. They had been taught to hate Zetharians, but actually seeing the destruction up close was different from imagining it. "We're no better than them," one pilot said after bombing a refugee camp. "We're just killers now." But the older survivors, the ones who remembered Earth, had no doubts. Jake Morrison gathered the younger soldiers together and showed them recordings of Earth's final day. He made them watch as cities vanished. He made them listen to the screams. He made them count the dead. 7 billion, he said when the recordings ended. 7 billion innocent people murdered in a single day. "And you want to show mercy to the ones who did it?" The soldiers said nothing. What could they say? By the end of the 2nd month, Zetharian military resistance had collapsed completely. Their fleets were destroyed. Their colonies were burning. Their government was dead. The few surviving ships fled into deep space with whatever refugees they could carry, desperately searching for somewhere to hide. The largest refugee fleet contained 300 ships carrying maybe 50 million Zetharians. They were heading for an unexplored region of space, hoping to disappear and rebuild. Sarah Bennett tracked them down personally. She brought her strike group alongside the fleeing ships and opened a communication channel. A Zetharian appeared on the screen, old and tired, his face showing pure despair. Please, he begged. We surrender. We will never bother humanity again. Just let us live. Let the children live. Sarah thought about the Zitharian children who had died on the homeworlds, billions of them, burned to nothing in seconds. Then she thought about the human children who had died on Earth, the ones who had been vaporized before they even knew danger was coming. You did not let our children live, she said. Why should we let yours? She cut the communication and gave the order to fire. The refugee fleet tried to scatter, but there was nowhere to go. One by one, the ships were destroyed. 50 million more dead. When the last ship exploded, Sarah felt nothing, just emptiness. The human fleet regrouped at a destroyed Zitharian military base and took stock of what they had accomplished. In 8 weeks of constant warfare, they had destroyed the Zitharian civilization completely. 118 colony worlds burned. 7,000 orbital facilities destroyed. Approximately 137 billion Zitharians killed. Are there any left? Lisa asked during the command meeting. Some small groups scattered in deep space, Danny reported. Maybe a few million total. They're in tiny ships with limited supplies. Most will probably die before they find anywhere to settle. Send out hunter groups to track them down, Lisa ordered. I want them all dead. Even the ones who had nothing to do with Earth's destruction? Danny asked. The ones born after the attack? Lisa looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. Do you think the Zitharians cared which humans were guilty when they burned Earth? They killed everyone. Every baby, every child, every innocent person. We're just returning the favor. Over the following months, human hunter groups tracked down the last scattered survivors. Some Zitharians fought back. Some tried to surrender. Some just accepted their fate and died quietly. By the end of the year, the Zitharian species was extinct, completely and totally erased from existence, just as they had tried to erase humanity. The human fleet began the long journey home to the colonies, their mission accomplished. On every ship, the crews were quiet, lost in their own thoughts about what they had done. They had set out to commit genocide, and they had succeeded. History would remember them as monsters, and they knew it, but Earth had been avenged. The human fleet returned to New Hope Station as heroes to some and monsters to others. The younger generation, those born after Earth died, looked at the returning soldiers with mixed feelings. They had been taught to hate the Zitharians, but they had not expected their people to become exactly what they hated. Nathan Pierce stood before the Colonial Council to present the final report. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he read the numbers. Zitharian civilization has been completely eliminated. We have verified the destruction of 118 colony worlds, 7,000 orbital facilities, and approximately 137 billion individuals. Multiple deep space search missions have confirmed no survivors remain in any surveyed system. The council chamber was silent. Some people looked satisfied. Others looked sick. What about the other species? Council leader Patricia Holmes asked. The ones the Zitharians had conquered and controlled? We have made contact with 7 different civilizations that were under Zitharian rule, Nathan replied. They are now free. We have shared our story with them and offered help rebuilding. Several have asked to form a defensive alliance with humanity. And what do they think of what we did? Patricia asked quietly. Nathan hesitated. Some are grateful. Some are horrified. Most are simply relieved the Zitharians are gone. Admiral Lisa Keene, now white-haired and looking every day of her age, addressed the council for the last time before retiring. We set out to commit genocide and we succeeded. History will remember us as murderers, and it should. We became exactly what we hated. But we also made sure the Zitharians can never destroy another innocent species. I will not apologize for what we did. The Zitharians chose to be monsters first. They destroyed Earth without warning, without mercy, without even talking to us. They killed 7 billion people because they were afraid of what we might become. Well, now they know what we became, and they paid the price for teaching us that lesson. She paused and looked around the chamber at all the faces watching her. But now we have to decide what comes next. Do we become conquerors ourselves? Do we rule through fear the way the Zitharians did? Or do we try to build something better? The council voted. It took 3 days of debate, but the decision was finally unanimous. Humanity would rebuild. They would help the species the Zitharians had oppressed. They would create a coalition dedicated to protecting young civilizations instead of destroying them. But they would never forget what had been done to them. In every new colony, they built monuments listing the names of the 7 billion dead, In every ship, they carried complete records of Earth before the attack. In every school, they taught children about the old world and what had been lost. And they taught them about what humanity had done in response. Marcus Webb retired from the military and became a teacher. He spent his days educating young people about the war, making sure they understood both the horror of Earth's destruction and the terrible price of revenge. "We had to do it," he told his students. "The Zetharians left us no choice. But that does not mean it was right. It just means it was necessary." One student raised her hand. "Would you do it again? If you could go back, would you still kill them all?" Marcus thought about his wife and daughter, dead for 30 years now. He thought about the Zetharian children he had condemned to suffocate in sealed bunkers. He thought about the 50 billion who had burned on their homeworlds. "Yes," he said honestly, "I would do it again. That's what makes it so terrible." Sarah Bennett never spoke publicly about what she had done. She retired to a quiet colony far from the main settlements and lived alone. Sometimes people recognized her and called her a hero. Sometimes they called her a monster. She never responded to either. Late at night, she would dream about the refugee fleet, about the old Zetharian who had begged for mercy, about the 50 million lives she had ended with a single order. She told herself they deserved it. She told herself it was justice for Seattle, for Earth, for all the humans who had died. But the dreams never stopped. Danny Cruz became the youngest admiral in human history. He used his position to push for laws that would prevent humanity from ever becoming like the Zetharians. "We must never attack first," he said. "We must never destroy without cause. We survive to stop the Zetharians from hurting others, not to become the next threat." Not everyone agreed. Some humans argued that the galaxy was a dangerous place and only strength mattered. They wanted to build a military empire, to conquer other species before those species could threaten humanity. But they were outvoted. Humanity chose to be protectors instead of conquerors. 10 years after the war ended, Jake Morrison stood before the Monument to the Lost, a massive wall listing every name of everyone who had died when Earth burned. 7 billion names carved in stone stretching for miles. He was an old man now, bent and gray, his body failing. But he had lived to see the Zetharians destroyed. He had lived to see Earth avenged. Was it worth it? A young reporter asked him. "Killing an entire species. Was it worth it?" Jake looked at the wall of names. He found his mother, his father, his sister. He found his friends from school, his neighbors, everyone he had ever known. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I thought it would make the pain go away. I thought watching them die would heal something inside me. But it did not. The pain is still here. The loss is still here. Revenge did not bring back the dead. Then why did you do it?" the reporter asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Because we had to make sure no other species would suffer what we suffered. The Zetharians had been destroying civilizations for thousands of years. Someone had to stop them. We just happened to be the ones who survived long enough to do it. But you became monsters yourselves." "Yes," Jake agreed. "We did. That's the price we paid. We lost our humanity to save other species from losing theirs. I suppose history will decide if that was noble or terrible." He touched his mother's name on the wall one last time. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I know you would not have wanted this. You believed in forgiveness and second chances, but I could not forgive them. I could not give them a second chance. All I could do was make sure they could never hurt anyone else again." Jake died 3 months later, an old man who had spent his entire life working for revenge and found no peace when he finally achieved it. The human colonies continued to grow. They welcomed refugees from other species and shared their technology freely. They built schools and hospitals and research centers. They helped less advanced civilizations develop without interfering in their cultures. And whenever a new species asked about Earth, about why humanity seemed so driven to protect others, they told the story. They showed recordings of Earth burning. They listed the 7 billion dead. They explained what the Zetharians had done and what humanity had done in return. Some species were inspired. Some were frightened. All of them understood the lesson. In a dangerous universe, there were species who would destroy you simply because they feared what you might become. And there were species who would avenge themselves with absolute totality if you tried. Humanity had learned both lessons the hard way. 50 years after the war, the last survivor who remembered Earth finally died. With her death, there was no one left alive who had actually seen the old world before it burned. But the memories lived on. The recordings, the documents, the monuments. Future generations would know what had been lost and what had been done to avenge it. They would know that humanity had been pushed to the edge of extinction and survived. They would know that humanity had committed genocide in the name of revenge. They would know both the terrible cost of the attack and the terrible cost of the response, and they would have to decide for themselves whether it had been worth it. The Zetharians were gone, extinct, erased from existence. The galaxy was safer without them. Dozens of young civilizations were growing and thriving because humanity had stopped the ones who would have destroyed them, but the price had been high. Humanity had sacrificed its innocence, its morality, its claim to being better than the monsters who had attacked Earth. In the end, they had answered annihilation with absolute vengeance, just as they promised, and the universe would never forget.